Hi everyone, and welcome back to another Lawn Fawn video. This is Mindy Eggen. In today's video, I'm going to be making a very sweet Mother's Day card. I'm going to be using the older stamp set called Mom and Me. It has some really cute images on here of a parent and their child, either hugging or individual. So I'm lining up my images that I'll be using. I'm also bringing in some clouds from the All the Clouds stamp set. And I have a piece of white cardstock here measuring 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I'm going to ink up my images with the Lawn Fawn jet black ink, stamp that down onto my cardstock, and then I'm also going to be stamping this little tree stump that has the heart in the middle. This is also from the Mom and Me stamp set. I'm going to stamp this tree trunk in Crunchy Leaf ink, and then I'm going to take this little heart off of that same stamp set, line that up right in the middle, and pick that up at the door of my Misty, and I'm going to stamp this in Wild Rose ink, or any pink or red ink would look really cute for this. They also have included on this stamp set little sentiments that fit inside of that little heart, so I'm going to line up one of them, and I'm going to stamp this just to some black ink, or a dark brown ink I think would look really cool too. After I have everything stamped, I'm going to work on my Copic coloring, and I will have all of the colors listed at the top of the screen. And I'll be using some dark browns for this. So I have E47, E44, 43, and 42. I'm putting my darkest area on the right-hand side of my owl. So I started with that E47, just kind of adding some shadow areas under the bottom side of the wing, and then blending out with the remaining colors. Now, you may notice here that I am going to end up forgetting one little part of the wing, but I do come back and fix that. I'm ending my coloring here with an E42, which I thought would be a really great color to color in my tree trunk. So I'm going over all of that white space that's in the tree trunk. Crunchy Leaf is Copic friendly, so this is perfectly safe to color on top of, and none of my colors are going to bleed. Then I'll come back in and work on the face of the owl. So I have E42, 41, and E40. I did notice at this point I forgot the wing, so I'm going to come back with my previous colors and just finish coloring that in. And for the baby owl, I'm going to be using some warm grays. I have W4, W2, and W1. Then for the clouds, I have just a light blue, so I have BG000, and I did have extra ones here, but I'd rather have extra clouds than not enough. Once all my coloring is finished, I'm going to cut these out with the coordinating die. So I lined them all up, and I'm holding them in place with a low tack tape. Then I'm going to take a piece of white cardstock, and I'm using the second largest frame from the small stitched rectangle, and I'm going to die cut that out. This is going to set my scene. I also die cut out some grassy borders from cilantro cardstock. And for my main card panel, I'm going to pick out some pattern paper from the Spring Fling paper pack. I ended up choosing this really pretty light pink with the flowers. I thought this was really great for Mother's Day. I'm taking the largest die from the large stitched rectangle, and I'm die cutting that pattern paper from that. I also die cut a piece of white cardstock out of that same die. This is just going to add stability to the front of my card. Now back to my smaller piece that I had die cut from the small stitched rectangle, I'm going to add just a little halo of color behind where my owl is going to sit. So I am using Worn Lipstick Distress Oxide ink and a blending brush. I like to use a blending brush for this because I want it to really fade off into white. I didn't want it to be completely pink. I just wanted to tie in the pink of the patterned paper into my background. I'm also going to add a little color to my grass just to kind of give a little bit more look of dimension. So for this, I'm using Mowed Lawn Distress Oxide ink and a blending brush so that I can fade off into the color of the cardstock. I'm just starting at the top of the grass and blending down, and I'll repeat that for my smaller piece of grass that I have die cut here too. I've also been experimenting with different ways to add splatter to my images. For this one, I'm using the Mowed Lawn Spray Stain. So I spritzed a little bit onto my craft mat, and I'm picking that up with my paintbrush. And this is a small paintbrush. The smaller the paintbrush, the smaller the flicks. I'm also going to bring that blended panel back in, and I spritzed down some picked raspberry spray stain. Now you can see my brush is a little bigger, and my spots now, or my flicks, are a little bigger. So I pulled my paintbrush back a little bit. I moved farther away to help kind of make them a little bit smaller. Now I can attach my grass, so I'm just adding a tape runner to the grass and a little bit to my card panel there. That little piece I'm going to be adding my owl to. Put on both layers, and then I will be taking this over to my paper trimmer and I'm going to trim off any of that overhang. Once that's trimmed down, I'm going to bring this over and start working on setting up my scene. So I'm starting with the items that are going to be in the furthest back of the card, which is the tree stump that I'm tucking behind that grass, and also adding my clouds. Now it's at that point where I realized a sentiment is not going to fit towards the top, which is what I originally planned. So after I have my clouds attached and I trimmed off the excess, I'm going to bring this over to my Misty tool, and I picked out a really cute sentiment from the Mom and Me stamp set, lined it up towards the bottom on my grass, and I'm going to pick that up with the door of the Misty. I'm going to prep this with an anti-static powder tool, and then I'm going to stamp my sentiment in Lawn Fawn's clear embossing ink. I'll then sprinkle on some white embossing powder and tap off any excess, and then melt this with my heat tool. Now the grass does kind of peel up just a little bit, but it really looks like I just zhuzhed my grass. So it actually kind of works out. It's still attached. It didn't hurt the glue any. It just kind of popped up that grass a little bit for me. Once that cooled down, I'm going to just buff off any excess powder with a Swiffer cloth. Now I can finish the assembly of the rest of my card here. So I added a little foam square to one of my smaller clouds. I'm also going to add some foam squares to my little owl, and I'm going to place that right on top so the mommy or daddy owl is hugging the baby. And off screen, I did trim down a piece of white cardstock that fits about 1/4 of an inch bigger than this die cut piece. I just wanted this decorated panel to stand out a little bit more from the pattern paper, and that little bit of white border really helped do that. Then I lined that with some foam tape, and I'm adding it directly onto my pattern paper. I decided I'm going to stamp a sentiment in the inside of my card, so I have a piece of white cardstock. This is 5.5 by 8.5, and I scored it at 4.25, so it is a side folding card, and I'm going to reinforce that fold with my bone folder. Then just using my tape runner, I'm going to attach my decorated panel to the front of that card, and I'm going to take this over to my Misty and line up a sentiment from that Mom and Me stamp set. This just says Happy Mother's Day. So once that's lined up straight, I'll pick that up at the door of the Misty, and I'm going to stamp this in that same color I used before, the Wild Rose ink, or any other type of color ink would work really cute in here. There's also some cute little hearts on that stamp set, so I lined those up as well and stamped those down around my sentiment. And then that finishes off my card for you for today. So just a really cute Mother's Day card that's ready to be sent in the mail. And I'm also including my color chart Copic colors that I use to color in the owl. So if you want to use that for reference, you certainly can. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.